All right, welcome everyone to episode 24. This is part 3 in our Create.Believe.Conquer series. So this is Conquer. So if you are just landing on this, you're watching the replay, you're hearing this on the podcast, go back and listen to episode 22 and 23. That's going to give you context. It's going to have you along the journey with us in order of the whole Create.Believe.Conquer process. So just to review, what we did in Create was really start to shift out of a place of fear and start to shift in a place of creation. And we learned how to do that. We did some experiments. I saw a lot of people in the group kind of posting what they were creating, and I could just tell there was like a sigh of relief of like, yes, I just needed this. I just needed to create. And a lot of times we get stuck in what we think we need to do because everything seems like it needs to be done right now. And we don't really allow that time or space for creativity. So then we create our vision, we create our values. We moved on to yesterday's, which was believe. And really, we should probably spend the most time in believe because we're constantly coming up with limiting beliefs. We're constantly coming up against them, but that's actually okay. That's the process that we're meant to go through. And also, each and every time we come up against a limiting belief, it's our process to say, oh, I see you. I see that as a limiting belief, and I can choose to believe something different, and I can practice my potential in this moment. So I can choose, I want to hold on to, take it day by day, and that's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to step into that, and I'm going to continue to believe that. So that's a review of yesterday. And today is focused on conquering. Conquer. I love the word. I love the word conquer. The way I got the inspiration for using the word conquer in this is because there is a scripture and it says we're more than conquerors. So it already says like you've already won, you've already done it, it's happened, like just step up and continue to go through the process. So when I talk about conquering, I think sometimes we put pressure on ourselves, especially as a recovering perfectionist myself. I work with a lot of perfectionists. We want to win. We want to be the best. We're a high achiever. We want to get an A plus. We want to get bonus. We want to get extra credit. We want to get all the things. And sometimes that word conquer or success or that word might be triggering. So I first want to identify, is this word triggering or does the word success trigger you? And then let's redefine what success means as we move forward and what conquering means as we move forward. And I'm going to give an example. I think I talked about this in one of the first 2 webinars as well, which is I recently, took kind of a little break, a little staycation inside my house. Wasn't doing as much, was spending a lot of time with my new husband, getting extra time with him because he's home from work. But then my gym was closed, so I wasn't really going to the gym that much. And then I finally got like, you know what? I can't do this anymore. And I was thinking to myself, what kind of workout can I do? And I decided you're going to run 2 miles, do 22 squats, 22 sit-ups, 22 push-ups. And for some people, they're like, oh, that's a lot, right? But you got to remember, I come from the fitness industry. To me, that's just like a very basic workout, right? It takes me about 30 minutes to complete it. And me in the past would have been like, I want to do something big. I want to do something huge. Like I want to make it hard and progressive. And right now in this moment, all I needed to do was get out there, make myself run that 2 miles. And then I knew once I did that 2 miles, it was pretty easy for me to do the other 2 things, right? The other 3 things. So in that way, I've learned conquering for me is getting out there, doing the 2 miles, getting out there and doing the 2 miles instead of sitting at home, complaining that the gym is closed, complaining that I can't use any weights and not getting any workout done. And then being in that vicious cycle of I'm not working out, I feel bad about myself, therefore I'm not working out, therefore I'm eating, therefore I feel bad about myself, and just continuing that cycle. But I use that as an example because we do this in many ways when we're setting our goals. We might set them too big. We might set them rarely we set them too small, right? Like we're like, oh, let me do this. And the reason I say that is we want to dream big. We want to set our sights on what is our 10-year vision? What is it we want? Where do we see ourselves in 10 years? Or do we see ourselves in 1 year, 5 year? And this is what we started on when we started in the create process. So we want to have a big vision, maybe something bigger than we think we can achieve, but then we break it down into actionable steps And then we recognize ourselves and celebrate for when we take those steps. Like for me, that 2 miles in the scheme of things doesn't feel like a lot, but that is going to set my entire day up for success because I got up, I got out there, I already did something I didn't want to do. So I'm building that resilience, I'm building that mindset muscle. And then today, what I did is like, I said, you know what? I'm going to do an extra like 25 minutes and I'm going to call it a bonus round. And then I did a bonus round where I ended up doing more. And at the end of the day, I felt like I was overachieving versus setting my sights too high, trying to be perfect, trying to do everything, trying to come right out of the gates doing a 1-hour workout would have not worked for me, right? So how can we structure our plan? And conquering is all about conquering the plan. If we don't have the plan, if we don't have that war strategy, that battle strategy, then how can we conquer it? So it's about setting up that structure, redefining what success is going to mean for us, and then checking the boxes each and every day, taking it one day at a time. So I want to revisit, and I'm going to continue to revisit this in every single webinar, our vision and our values. That is what is going to lead us throughout this process. So again, if you haven't had time to go and do your values, go ahead and go to my website, cammykennedy.com/values, do the values worksheet and work on your values during this time. The second piece is your vision, your 10-year vision. Where do you see yourself in 10 years? What does that look like? Then you can break it down and work backwards to what's the 5-year plan, what's the 3-year, what's the 1 year. And then once you hit that 1 year mark, you can pretty much start to figure out, well, what needs to happen this quarter in the next 6 months to get me closer to that 1 year goal. And then in that next 1 year, what needs to happen to get me to that 3-year goal? So breaking it down, structuring it out, I think what people a lot of times do, and I used to do this as well until I had a mentor sit down with me and say, like, create your 10-year vision, create it, be really intentional about it. I think a lot of times what we do is we're very short-sighted and we will just be like, oh, I want to just look at 1 year at a time. And then before we know it, we said we were going to write the book and we didn't. We said we were going to launch the podcast and we didn't. We said we were going to move here and then we didn't, whatever that is, right? So if you're actually diligent about putting it down by whatever the date is, 2030, I want to live in California. Okay, what are the steps that we're taking to get us there? Because on this path to conquering whatever it is your vision is, you're going to be able to define your decisions based on what your vision is for your future. In that way, you may not look successful from the outside to somebody else. They're like, what are they doing? You know, they're not working a real job. They're not stable. And we get that a lot as entrepreneurs. Like, what are they doing with their life? But it's because we have a vision that is pulling us forward that we can see, that's going to require us to take those steps, that we will have to say no to some things. It's going to have to be a hard no to some things that are not aligned, and people from the outside looking in may not understand why we're making those decisions. So as we create this structure and plan, we have our values, which is how we make our decisions. You know, how do we want to live? Do we want to live in integrity? Is family first for us? Is freedom first for us? Do we want to have a flexible schedule? Are we willing to work 16, 20 hours to get it done? Whatever your values are is going to be how you show up in your business, in your plan, in your career, in your parenting, whatever it is that you're wanting to grow or work on during this time, you want to apply those to your values. The next thing I have written down is something that a mentor, my very first business coach, said. Her name is Jill Coleman, and she was my first fitness business coach. I saw her speak, and this is kind of twofold. I saw her speak at this fitness event in California, and I remember sitting there in the front row, because I'm always that front row person, sitting there and watching her speak, and I was like, I'm going to work with her. And I signed up for her, lower program thing, something I could afford at the time, like $160 or something. And then I think 2 or 3 years later, I went all in with her. I worked with her for a year. And then the next year I worked with her again. I was an ambassador with her for 2 years. And the thing that I knew that made me want to work with her is something she said when she stood up there, which was, everybody always thinks we have to have it all figured out. And of course, there's a lot to be said for having a plan. But there's also, this is what perfectionists do, this whole like planning is the plan. Like you think planning is doing, and it's not the same, right? Like, let me just like look at the colors of my website. Let me see what my logo is going to be. Like we do all these things that's actually not the real thing. And we're distracting ourselves from the real thing. If we're in business, that would be an income producing activity. If we're parenting, it's probably doing a lot of personal development on ourselves. It's probably the biggest thing that we can do if we're trying to lead others in any capacity, whether that's in a business situation, whether that's in a parenting situation, is spending that time instead of watching Netflix, working on ourselves instead of going, oh, my kids are just blah, 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 and right, and making it somebody else's fault. Or instead of, oh, I just keep attracting these certain types of clients. Well, it's like, well, where do we think that's coming from, right? So taking ownership, taking personal responsibility for that. But the thing that she said was, instead of planning and just continuing to plan, she said, ready, fire, aim, 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 aim. Ready, go, and then figure it out as you go. Because that really is what creating anything is, right? And I use parenting as an example. You can read all the parenting books that you want. You can plan as much as you want. You are still not prepared for what's about to happen when you have this screaming baby and you're getting no sleep. Nothing could prepare you for that, no matter what, right? So you do have to figure it out as you go. That's part of life. That's part of experiencing life. So ready, fire, aim, aim, aim is a mantra that I like to use, which is like, just do it, even if you don't have it figured out yet. And that was part of what I said in the Create webinar, which is like, if you're getting an idea, go for it. Do it, figure it out, try it out, see how it works. You can tweak and change as you move forward. The other piece is, what's the worst that could happen? So you can ask yourself two questions too. What's the worst that could happen to me? So if I do this, what's the absolute worst that could happen? Sometimes it's nice to go down the worst case scenario path because you're going to be thinking it anyway, so you might as well address it. Well, if I go out and do this, people are going to laugh at me. I might lose all my money. Nobody might sign up with me. If I make this investment, my business might fail. If I do this, somebody might hate me, right? At the end of the day, it pretty much all leads back to, I'm going to be socially ostracized. I'm going to be out from the tribe, and I'm going to be alone, and therefore I'm going to die. Because that's where our brain takes us as humans. If we didn't fit into society, when they had walled cities, we would be put outside the wall, and then we actually would die. So this thought process, this fear of being different, of taking the action, of doing something different, of being judged, of being outside the group, it stems from something that actually we really needed to keep us alive in the past. But now you can recognize it as a fear of, oh, we're told not to be different, because if you were different in the caveman days, you would be eaten by a saber-toothed tiger, right? Because you're going out there dancing around in the nighttime, and they're like, no, you can't be out there doing that. You have to follow the rules. Now the rules are a little bit different. There are no rules, but we still have society pressures and our peer group that we tend to feel are the same as death, right? So ask your question when you're going to do the thing, when you're going to conquer the plan, ask, what is the worst that could happen? And really, I think these days, like bankruptcy, like losing all your money, I mean, that's probably the worst that could happen. And again, I always like to have perspective. There have been so many millionaires that have lost all their money multiple times, and they came back to be millionaires again. So just because you do go bankrupt, or just because you lose all your money, that circumstance still does not define you if you are committed to conquering, right? Somebody that goes bankrupt doesn't give up. They can. But if you're committed to your plan and you're committed to, this is my vision, nothing's going to stop you, no matter what happens for you. And then, interestingly, I just said what happens for you. I didn't even say what happens to you, right? Because that thing, this is what I was getting to, that thing, that bankruptcy, that huge thing, that worst case scenario that happened, that now makes you stronger. That now gives you perspective. That now gives you the opportunity to say, I made it through that big thing. Heck, I can make it through this next big thing too. So the worst case scenario, do that. Let yourself go there. What does that look like? Let yourself play it all out. And then choose, again, your belief on what you're going to do moving forward. The next question that I think people ask, and you can ask it in two tones. It's the same question. The question is, why not me? And so you can ask it in this way, which is like, why not me? Like, so-and-so has a successful business. Like, so-and-so, look, her kids are perfect. So-and-so has a great relationship. Like that comparison of, look at her. She wrote a book. She did all these things. Look, why not me? Why can't I have that? Or you can ask it as, why not me? Like, she's nothing different than I am. Then why not me? Of course. Like, she came from the same background. Maybe she came from a worse background. We have a tendency to create a story around people who are successful. And we have a tendency to create a divide and an excuse, because that is what it is a story and an excuse of, so-and-so had this, and that's why they have this. And I didn't have this, so therefore I can't have this. I like to look at it as, if she can have that, like, I can have it too. I like to see it as an example. So when you're asking questions in this planning phase, in this implementation phase, notice where your beliefs still come up, right? The belief portion of this never goes away. So even though we're talking about conquering and setting up a structure and a plan, also notice what questions you're asking yourself, how you're asking them. And that's one of the biggest ones that I like to go is, why not me? And I'm always a proponent of anybody famous. Like, I'm not going to get starstruck by them because they're just people. They're just people, right? They have a level of success that may be defined by a lot of people as, this is something that we all want. This is attainable. This is amazing. They're amazing. But really, they're just people. They're just people, just like we are. So notice also where you're putting anybody else on a pedestal and saying, well, they can do it and blah, blah, blah. Whenever, look at what they've done, structure your plan around what they've done if they have something that you want to have. So I like to have a role model, somebody that you start to say, okay, well, if they did it, I'm going to structure things after them. If they did it, I'm going to start to do the things that they do. So that means if they're investing in a coach, I'm going to invest in a coach. If they are marketing in this certain way that I like, I'm going to market in this way. If they are doing personal development and doing breath work, like maybe doing things that we normally wouldn't do, like, oh, they're really into yoga. Let me just see if that does something for me. So in that way, you can start to model somebody that you have defined as successful and start to do the things that they do. And you may find some of their things won't work for you. So in the same way, if you just blindly model your coach, or if you just blindly model somebody because you think that their way is perfect, that's also not going to serve you, right? Because everybody is individual to a degree. There are systems, there are structures in place that can help everyone, but you may need to tweak them. So I always want to remind people of personal ownership, personal responsibility of the process of, nobody can tell you how to do it. You've got to get out there and do it. You might follow a structure and a system, and then you might fail. And then it's like, well, maybe that didn't work for me. Maybe I need to create it a little bit differently in my own way. So knowing that there's not one hard and fast rule on, this is the one way to do it, right? There's multiple different ways to do things. You have the opportunity to model somebody, but you also have the opportunity to change directions and pivot when you're finding out that maybe this isn't working how I thought it was. Okay, tell me guys in the chat, what are you guys getting from this? What are you getting from this? What breakthroughs, ahas are you getting? I'll read that as I move along. Okay, moving forward in terms of creation, and we talked about this on day one in terms of like actually creating an income, actually creating a source of revenue. And this may not be true for everyone. Everybody on this replay or podcast may not be wanting to run their own business, but I also find that fulfillment is really important. And I know a lot of people have hobbies, side hustles, things that you may be able to turn into another income stream where you're making Christmas ornaments for people, right? And that just fills your heart, and maybe you sell them for something. But I think we're in this day and age where everybody really does have a skill, everybody really does have a gift, and people are willing to pay for this skill and this gift. And especially during these specific times, a lot of this is going to be done online. A lot of this, if it's a product, ship the product, they can pay you for it. But I want to start to get creative about what direction we're going in during these times, during the next, specifically the next 90 days. I like to look at everything in a 90-day structure. As of now, we're in April of 2020. So that would take us through April, May, June. You can set your quarter out and start to set some goals for your quarter. I like to use the life wheel, or the wheel of power, which again is on my website if you want to have that for reference. It's all these different areas of your life. So it may be health, it may be family, it may be travel, business, finance, and you can start to set goals in every single area. However, know that within a 90-day period, you're really only going to be able to focus on about 2 to 3 areas at once. So if you want to run a marathon and you want to write a book and you want to launch a business in 90 days, those 3 things, something's going to have to give, right? So knowing what my top priorities are within the next 90 days and knowing what areas I'm going to really focus on, and then know the next 90 days, maybe that's when you want to start training for that half marathon or marathon, right? Knowing that not everything's going to be able to be at a level 10, 100% focus the entire time. You will have to focus on different areas at different times. So as we start to get into, okay, maybe brainstorming, here's some questions that you can ask yourselves. What gifts do I have? What do people need? How can I merge these two to create value and income? And then test it. You go out there and test it. I don't watch Shark Tank, but I know that most of you guys know what Shark Tank is, right? A lot of times, one of the biggest challenges those entrepreneurs have when they go out there is they'll like show, I'm just going to use this bottle for an example. They'll show, they're like, I made this new bottle and it's a bottle holder because I didn't want to use my hand and now I drink out of it. And I asked my family and they said they would buy it. But like they didn't actually test it outside of their immediate family, who of course is going to say they're going to buy it. And then they have this product that like, yeah, it's cool. And yeah, but it's like, I can also just hold my bottle and drink it. I don't really need that item. So test it. And when you're putting it out there, that product, that idea, that thing, the craft, the service, put it out there and know that it's a test. So I think what makes us feel like failures most of the time is we put it out there, we put the time in, we create it, it's beautiful, we love it, and people don't buy it. And then we are just heartbroken because we put our heart and soul into this thing, or we put ourselves out there in selling our service, and then people don't buy it. And we think there's something wrong with us. How could we do that? And then we go right back to doing nothing because we put so much pressure on the thing, somebody saying yes, them buying it. Whenever that is just part of your process. Maybe you made the water bottle holder and it connected you to a shop owner who was like, you know, that doesn't really work for us, but like, you're really cool, you're really great. Would you be willing to design coasters for us? And then all of a sudden you're now designing coasters for the shop owner that you wouldn't have met had you not made the idiotic idea of making the bottle holder, right? So knowing that each of those perceived failures leads to another skill, another connection, another opportunity, another learning opportunity. I've had so many jobs in my life, and I'll list a couple of them out because people think they're funny. And I've been fired 3 times in the past 5 years. So this current situation that we're in kind of didn't faze me because I'm like, I've been fired 3 times. Like what? I mean, this is how it is. This is how it has been for me, right? And what that did for me was it allowed me to shift my mindset away from thinking that there is security in working for someone else, because there's not. People think that there is, and they're like, well, let me just go get a real job and stop running my business. But there's not, as we've seen, there's not security in working for somebody else, right? Really, it's back to taking personal ownership for our lives and creating maybe a side hustle, a side income, so that when something happens, we have the ability. And when something happens, we go, well, that sucked, and I'm going to keep moving forward, and I'm going to figure it out. I'm conquering. This is what I'm here for. And I was going to share you a couple of my jobs. So my very first job, I was a dishwasher. At 16 years old, I was a dishwasher in an Italian restaurant. And I worked for this lady, we called her Sweaty Betty. And story has it is that she like lived upstairs above the kitchen. And so she would just like come down into the kitchen without her shoes on. So it was just a real weird situation altogether. After college, I have a degree in biology. After college, I worked in a pathology laboratory. So I cut up human flesh. If anything was ever removed from anyone's body, a mole, let's say you had an extra toe, let's say you had some kind of biopsy, it was sent to me and I cut it up. And so, and I also worked in a veterinary hospital. I've worked customer service. I worked so many things. And when I'm out there in the work world, my resume looks like just a collage of what in the heck, right? But what it's done for me is given me the flexibility to operate with anyone at any level. Because I've worked with people from the top level CEOs down to the bottom level, the servers washing dishes, right? I've worked with everyone in every capacity so that I now am confident and comfortable. People looking at me would be like, you've had too many jobs in the past 15 years. You're ridiculous. What's wrong with you? Don't you know what you're going to be when you grow up? But to me, I needed all of those things. And I also needed to get fired 3 times because clearly I didn't learn the lesson the first time, right? God will give us repetitive things happening over and over to us until we learn the lesson. So those perceived failures, like we talked about on the last call, is just like falling off that bike. And at the end of the day, if you're committed to conquering, if you're committed to staying the course, that failure, you'll notice it. You'll say, 3 things. What did I learn? What could I have done better? What will I do next time? That's really it. And then you can move forward, and you can do that every single day. What did I do well today? What could I do better? What will I do next time? And you can use those 3 things as you navigate each and every day, all of the challenges and all of the successes even. Because even when you're successful, how could I tweak that? How can I make that a little bit better, right? Part of it is about showing up. A huge part of it's about showing up. But then it's about incrementally increasing and getting better by 1% each time. All right, I'm going to read some of the comments. Lisa says, I love the idea of modeling other coaches. Yes, especially mine. What I'm also finding is a level of comfort in putting my own personality and gifts in place to make systems, programs, platforms uniquely mine. Yes. And this is what's so interesting. I was talking to my coach or listening to one of her modules, and she was talking about building out a framework. Anytime you have a framework, and we're specifically talking about coaching, but you could use this at anything: parenting, being a leader in your business, setting up a framework for how you structure your day. When you have a framework, it's automatically, from the outside looking in, more impressive. And why is that? It's because you've been able to take what's in your head and put it out there for other people to know and understand. So I like to use an example of, like, if you're trying to explain to a kid how to tie their shoes, and you're like, I don't know, you just like wrap it around. Like, you just wrap it, just do it. Like, if you just keep telling people to just do it and you don't have a framework, or you can't walk them through the system, then they're not going to be able to tie their shoes ever. So you got to break it down. You got to tie the loop, wrap it around. Or some of y'all do bunny ears, which I think is weird. Some people teach bunny ears way. But either way, however you learned it, there was a framework set up for that. So structure was something I really resisted in my business because freedom is one of my values. And so again, I needed somebody to convince me of this so that I could bring that on as my personal belief. So I took somebody who, again, would be a role model, who had been through some things, who I respected, who I could learn from. And that person, I think I talked about him on the last one, is Jocko Podcast. Navy SEAL, wrote a book called Extreme Ownership. His mantra is discipline equals freedom. So when we take that discipline to get up early, to do the workout, to plan your day, to eat well, to do all those things, then we're free. Why are we free? Health is a perfect example. When we take care of our health, we're free to move our bodies. We're not bogged down by things that are going on because we're not eating well, we're not moving our bodies. When we're disciplined in our schedule, we end up having more free time. Because you notice when we're not disciplined, and I've done this fully. When I first started my business, I would just wake up at 10 in sweatpants and like kind of just go about my day, just because I'm like, I'm free to do what I want, and would never take full responsibility. When I started getting up earlier, started a morning routine, all of a sudden I got so much more done in the first part of the day that it's like I had a whole extra 5 hours. So I believe we can actually manipulate time when we have a structure, because then we're not we're wasting 2 hours on Instagram or Facebook, because every time is structured. And if we want to structure in an hour for Instagram, we can structure that in, but we're not wasting our time by just letting time do itself, right? Because time will run us if we decide that we're not going to do anything with it, right? So discipline equals freedom is one of the things that I've used, which is why one of my core values is disimplicity, making it as simple as possible, and showing up, discipline. Those two values in one is one of my core values. And one of the things that had been holding me back in terms of perfectionism was like trying to make it so good and have the links and the pictures and all of this. Whenever, this podcast series, this webinar series is a perfect example. I just said, I'm doing it and I'll figure it out later. I'll do all the uploads later. It'll put it together later, but it needs to happen now, and I'll do it, and I'll figure out the structure and the format later of what that's going to look like. I'm going to read some more comments here. Okay. Melissa says, I like giving yourself permission not to focus on everything on a level 10. Like putting smaller pieces together to create a bigger puzzle. Yes, I like this. And also that different seasons are going to have different levels depending on where you are. If you are in a season financially where you really need to work hard for money, then you guys, that's what you're doing during that season. That may mean ramen noodles. That may not mean having the best salads, right? So maybe you're not doing smoothies and shakes as much. However, after you financially stabilize, then you're going to go back into, okay, health is really a priority. I'm going to spend an extra money on organic foods in this season, right? So knowing that there's a season, there will be an up and down. A coach that I follow likes to call it harmony, right? So it's not balanced. Everything's not going to be balanced, but it's more so of a harmony. Like things are going up, things are going down, some things are up or down, and you will find where to shift and put your energy in those different seasons. But yes, I think it's easy, especially in the personal development field, and especially when we start to come up against limiting beliefs where we're like, oh, I need to work on this area and all of the areas. I need so much work, right? Like when we tend to think like, I have so much farther to go. But also remember that we're already gifted in some areas too. So know that we're not all of our life is going to be a level 1 or 2, right? Like we are naturally gifted and naturally have some higher levels. So always remember to embrace those, to I don't want to say focus on those, but to automate those. So some people are really like, I've got my health and fitness down, good. I've got my relationship down, good. We have a date night every Friday, like that's going to stay. So notice what you do well, and then you can transfer that structure over to other things where you may be challenged in, because the same principles are going to apply to all of them, right? Discipline equals freedom. That's going to be true in your relationship, making sure that you're still doing the same things that you did when you first started dating, structuring out time to spend together, doing nice things for each other. That's going to be true for health and fitness, showing up for those workouts, being disciplined on what you're putting in your body. That's going to be true for finances, having a structured plan for how you're spending your money, having a structured plan for when money comes in, what are we going to do with it? How are we going to invest? So those principles of what's going well for you can be transferred over to another area of your life, and you can have success in that area as well. Okay. Lisa says, also finding this week that seeds I've been planting are starting to produce a harvest where I thought dormancy had taken over. Yes. And this 100% has to do with taking the action now. Because imagine, Lisa, if you had waited until now to take that action, and then we'd be waiting another 6 months or whatever, like, so that's why the importance of taking the action now, because things are incubating. And I believe things are incubating because we're in our current self right now. And we talk a little bit about identity. I'll probably do a separate podcast on identity, but we're in our current self with our current level of awareness, with our current habits, the things that we do, and our current circumstances are a certain way. In order for us to get to that next level in any area, we have to become a different person. So that seed is sown, that intention is set, that vision is out there, but that gap, we are changing in the middle of that. We have to change in order to be able to receive that harvest that is coming to us. So if we don't have baskets ready to receive that harvest, if we don't have the space cleared to receive that, we're not able to receive it. So sometimes we do have to go through a purging process, a period of failure, a period of drought, to purge out all that stuff to allow that harvest to come in, because maybe we wouldn't have been grateful for it before. Maybe we wouldn't have treated it with reverence before. Maybe we needed this time to really take it seriously and really show up. So that dormancy period, that growth period, is preparing us for receiving that process. And it does come with consistent actions over and over again, day by day, and it eventually does pay off. And then Lisa says, I am believing in what I have and am continually creating, conquering action steps. Yes. Also not waiting until I have everything set up perfectly. Huge. Yes. This is very huge. And that's something, there's something to be said. And there's a lot of people out there that will say, specifically for our industry or anybody, probably everybody now who's online, they're going to say branding is so important. Get everything together, blah, 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 blah. And, I have a website that I transitioned over from a fitness website into a life coaching website. And for all of 2019, it had not been transitioned yet. And part of me was like kicking myself because I'm like, it's not transitioned yet. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. And I was hesitating on coaching because my website wasn't done. But that was just a limiting belief. I don't need a website to coach somebody. We have the phone, we have Zoom, done. I don't need the website. So sometimes we use those little hangups of like, I don't have it ready yet. I can't do it. Sometimes that is what is holding us back from taking the action. And because we're trying to like get the branding right, get the logo right, get it just right, whenever it's right, it's good. Good enough is good enough, like we said before. And I want to use this example too. You ever have like people over, like a little dinner party, and you're like, oh, I'm going to make this, and I'm going to do the cake, and I'm going to do this, and like the napkins are going to be like this. And you have this whole idea in your head, right? And then you go to the store and they don't have, you want blue napkins. They do not have blue napkins. And you are like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? They don't have blue napkins. And I was going to do the thing that I saw on Pinterest with the napkins, and now I can't. And the whole time you're having this inner turmoil about not being able to do the napkins, whenever your guests didn't even know about the dang napkins in the first place. They didn't know. They don't care. Them coming over and eating your food is not going to be affected by whether or not you had the napkins. But we create this whole big scenario of like, the napkins are going to make it perfect. So notice too, what you're projecting your anxiety on, because it wasn't about the dang napkins, right? We were just trying to get it perfect because our mother-in-law was coming over, or our best friend was coming over and she has a better job than us, and we thought she was going to judge us. Whatever that is, showed up in us trying to get the napkins perfect. So I want you to start to be aware of when those things come up and where you're projecting your anxiety. For me, I like to go on Pinterest. That's like what I do. I'm just like bored and anxious. I'm just scrolling on Pinterest. So when it gets out of hand, I have like a no Pinterest rule. because like you need to meditate before you just wake up and look at Pinterest, right? Or maybe it's Instagram for some people, or it's some type of social thing. And it's because we're feeling something off. We're feeling something off. It's an emotion we don't want to deal with. So we are going to go to that thing and it's going to give us a quick dopamine hit. Let me go to Instagram. Let me go to Facebook. Let me go to Pinterest. Let me go to the cupboard and grab some food because I want to avoid this feeling. So again, conquering is about being willing to show up, to look at yourself in the mirror each day, to say, I love you. You are doing amazing. And also, I noticed this about yesterday. Let's do this instead, right? So it's never like we're saying you're a bad person, you failed. Yesterday you ate your feelings, you ate a whole bag of potato chips. Listen, I've been there. I've eaten so many jars of peanut butter in one sitting, I can't even count anymore. But the point is I don't do it anymore, right? Because I actually recognize like, oh, that was a big issue. Here's the reasons why. Oh, you were dieting. I was crash dieting, which is why I was eating so much peanut butter. Once I allowed myself to have peanut butter in moderation, all of a sudden things were okay. But when we beat ourselves up and we say, you can't have peanut butter, you're a horrible person, you can't control yourself, then we're no longer in that conquering energy. We are in that energy of beating ourselves down, of not being able to take any more steps forward because we're telling ourselves each time you take a step forward, you're doing bad, you're doing bad, you're doing bad. So remembering to every morning or every evening, whichever you want to do, you can set your goal for the morning. What are the 3 things I want to achieve? Make them easy. Get them done. At the end of the day, you can review. What did I do well? What could I do better? What am I grateful for? And then the next day, same thing. A to-do list is not something that I would recommend knowing what I know now. I used to write to-do lists just out on a booklet. Over the years, I've learned from several different coaches, some other strategies. I do want to give Brooke Castillo of the Life Coach School credit on this one. I listened to this on her podcast. It is called Monday Hour One. It's a strategy that her and her team came up with. And what they do is you take that first hour of Monday, you write down everything that you want to achieve in that week. And then on your planner, on your schedule, your calendar, your agenda, you actually, well, I skipped a step. You write everything out that you want, and then you write the time that you think it's going to take you to get it done. So I'm going to do a blog post. It's going to take me an hour. I'm going to work out. It's going to take me 30 minutes. I'm going to make lunch. Like, make sure you're reminding yourself too, like, I need to have a break to make lunch. And then once you have the time and each item, then you structure them in your calendar for that week, and then you throw that to-do list away. Now, again, this is a good strategy. I've tailored it to myself. I don't like to throw that list away because when I make a list, I make a big list. I'm like, I'm going to get this done. And I like overwhelm myself of things that cannot be done this week. So typically what I do is I still keep that list, and then I'll write those extra things on next week. So that I'm like, okay, you're getting a little hyper, a little overzealous here. Like, you're not going to be able to do everything on your list. So those other things, I'll just move them to the next page, and I'll move them to the next page. And that'll happen. Those, those things where you're like, I really need to clean my car out, but like, it's actually not a super big priority, so I can move it back. So that would be a strategy that you can use for structuring your day. But what I've learned is making it easy to achieve is going to move you forward more. And this is counterintuitive because I know so many people, including Tony Robbins, that say like, take massive action, go, 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 do it. But coming from the health and fitness space, and especially from like the dieting space, and from people who are like, I'm going to go all in on health and fitness, that lasts about 10 days and then they relapse, right? Because it's going all in. And typically perfectionists are all or nothing. At least that's what they tell me. I'm all or nothing. I can't be in between. But what if you could? Because that's just the limiting belief, right? And is it serving you to be all or nothing, where you have 1 week where you're like, yay, I'm doing everything. And then the next week you're like, I'm a horrible person. And you have these ups and downs, so that if you looked at a month from a person who's all or nothing, they probably have less productivity. than a person who is steady like the turtle. Just like, I did it. Good job. Like, and it seems dumb because it's not exciting at the time to be like, I'm the turtle. I did one more thing today. But that dang turtle is going to have his book written, right? Like he's going to have it done because he showed up every day, wrote 500 words, whenever the all or nothing person went frantic, tried to get everything done in 1 week and then burned themselves out and had to lay on the couch for a week. So that's another reminder about being all or nothing. Okay, I have a couple more comments and I'm going to wrap up this and go to Q&A. Okay, Melissa says, that's me. I'm hesitating and launching a new website because everything isn't right and I can't implement all the stuff I want. I feel so overwhelmed that I just quit working on it. I feel you. Now, part of that may be getting another eye on it, getting some support. I had this situation whenever I was relaunching my site. I knew I had the ability to do it all on my own, like go into WordPress, blah, blah, blah. Although WordPress is like its own beast, right? However, I paid a branding consultant just to sit with me and go, what do you need to do? And she just gave me like 5 steps. And then she quoted me her price. And then I was like, no, I can do that myself. Thank you. But like what it did was it just say, these are the 3 things you need to do. Because when we look at it, we're like, it needs this and this color isn't right. It's the wrong blue. Again, back to the napkins. Like it's the wrong blue, but nobody knows. So it's like, what is the bare minimum functionality that we can deal with right now, especially if we want to make revenue from this, right? If it's something we want to make money from, we need to make money and put it out there now, right? Like it's not something that we have the luxury of waiting for, right? Most of us, at least, especially in this time. So I'm happy to chat with you more on that, Melissa, if you'd like, but those are some tips. And Lisa just says, Melissa, do it now. Yes, Elisa says, I was a paralyzed perfectionist. Yes, all or nothing, step-by-step moving forward. Yes. So the step-by-step moving forward doesn't feel sexy at the time. It doesn't feel great at the time. But I'll tell you, it's now become something that I love because at the end of every day, I feel successful. Like today, I had 2 goals. One was to get the email out to you guys. The other one was to set up this Zoom call. I don't think I had a third goal. Maybe showering, maybe doing my hair. I'll just count that as a goal. I'll just put it on there. But I got those done. And then I went and laid outside for an hour and like got some sun. And it was so beautiful because I was like, look at that. Oh no, I know what my third goal was. My third goal was listening to my coach's recording. And I did that while I was laying outside in the sun. So those are my 3 things. I didn't work an 8-hour day. I didn't even work a 5-hour day. I probably worked for 3.25 hours. But that to me was my productivity for that day. And that's all that matters because that's how I define my success for today. Like one thing at a time. I've learned to stop overwhelming myself with all the things that could be done. And I'm with you, Melissa, because my website has links on it from years ago that are no longer valid. They're just not working. But if I spend time on that, I'm not going to be able to be on here serving you guys. So you see how that doesn't align with my vision. And we can get to that someday. That's something that it's not really relevant to me right now. So what can you do in the moment that's going to move you forward, make the biggest impact now versus trying to get everything perfect? All right, I'm going to start wrapping up this call. For those listeners who are listening to the replay, make sure you do go back and get the whole series. For you guys listening live as well, I wanted to let you know this is being turned into a 5-day challenge as well. That's going to launch next week. So you guys have a week in between to kind of implement some of the stuff. Then I'm going to be doing a 5-day challenge, which will lead in to my 6-week group coaching, Create, Believe, Conquer. Create, Believe, Conquer was going to be an in-person retreat. I've hosted it once before in person. With everything going on, I had to cancel the in-person structure. It was going to be a 3-day retreat, spending 1 day on Create, 1 day on Believe, 1 day on Conquer. But what's interesting is it's morphed into a 6-week program. So now we're going to spend 2 weeks on Create, 2 weeks on Believe, 2 weeks on Conquer. So it's kind of interesting that I believe we're going to have more value coming out of this, although meeting in person is powerful. we're going to have more time to go deeper into what is exactly are we creating? What exactly limiting beliefs are we having? And then I can individualize people's affirmation statements. What are your biggest limiting beliefs? How can we work through those? And then the conquer process, that's one of the biggest places where people need accountability. It's one thing to say you're going to do something. It's a whole nother thing to have that accountability of someone showing up to say, did you do what you said you were going to do this week? So all of this webinars, everything is leading up to that 6-week program. If you guys are interested and you want to know more about that, shoot me a message, let me know. But I'm going to go ahead and close it out for everybody on here. You guys, please do follow me on Instagram at CamiKennedy.com. If you're taking part in this challenge, look for hashtag CBC challenge, Create, Believe, Conquer challenge. All of that stuff is going to be up all over the social medias. And I will see you guys soon.